I wasn't sure if I was going to make this video or not. 1 week ago I had a full script ready, I even recorded the footage for the video. But then I was wondering, should we even be talking about this? So my video is not about DLSS 5. We'll talk about that of course, but my video is about why we should be cautious of the way we talk about AI bullshit.
Neural rendering, the fusion of 3D graphics and artificial intelligence. This is DLSS 5. Take a look at it.
Hi, I'm Team Krief. I make indie games, so this is an important topic for me. I understand the broad technical aspects of the AI stuff, but I also understand the ethical impact it has on artists, for instance. First, let's explain some stuff. We need to deep dive into some topics so that we'll be able to understand how Nvidia seems to be pulling some kind of Trojan horse right now, in my opinion. What was DLSS supposed to be? So let's go back. When you render a picture for a game, you can go and seek the color for each pixel. What should the color for the first pixel be? What should the color for the second pixel be? And so on and so forth. That's what we've done for years, and it works pretty well. But there's one case where it falls short. Edges. Between a red and a blue surface, for instance, your pixel could be either red or blue. If the resolution of our screen was infinite, it wouldn't cause any issue. But since we can see the pixels, instead of rendering a line between the two surfaces, we render a staircase. It's called aliasing. We have a lot of anti-aliasing techniques at our disposal, one of them being super sampling. The concept of super sampling is simple. Instead of checking for the value of color at the center of each pixel, you check multiple values per pixel and take the average of those results. That would mean that a pixel that sits exactly on the edge will not be red or blue, it will be purple. That way, the edges will be smoother. It works really well, but it also means that instead of rendering the game at your screen's resolution, you are now computing multiple times the amount of pixels you will need. This is quite costly. DLSS stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling. What that could imply is that instead of actually doing super sampling by doing all the computing, you will use deep learning to infer what the pixel should look like. The idea here is that it will be cheaper to do that inference from a trained model than to do the actual super sampling. However, from the get-go, that's not really what the technology was. In 2018, the first time they showed this off, it was rendering at close to 1440p, and then they were using an AI network trained on specific games to output at 4K. So you can think of it as an upscaler with on top of it a kind of an anti-aliasing. It's an upscaler, it's a fancy upscaler. This is an opaque and proprietary technology, so we are not sure, but they seem to be training the models on really high resolution renders, or more like really highly super sampled renders. With the hardware they make, it seems to be less costly to first render a low resolution picture and then upscale it to a high resolution by guessing what each pixel should look like, than to render at the high resolution directly. The issue here is that you are guessing using AI, and we all know that this could end badly. However, you still use the low resolution render as the base reference, and your goal is to be as close as possible to the high resolution render. So there's a little that could go wrong here. We know exactly what we want, and we know exactly how bad it could deviate. And it's not that bad. Like, the worst case scenario here is that the upscaling fails and there are some artifacts. This is one of the few scenarios where using AI could make sense. A lot of marketing and tech reviews around DLSS were focused on showing how close the output was getting to the actual native render. AI elements here were used to make the cards use less computing power to get a similar result. Of course, it was not perfect, like the training data was opaque and the result could have artifacts, but at least the goal was to make the card output something as close as possible to a high resolution render with no aliasing, but just using less computing power. Even when they started talking about frame generation, I was kind of on board because after the generated frame, there will be a real frame. So the worst case scenario here is I see some artifact between real frames. Original artist intent is preserved, AI is not supposed to create anything, and the worst case scenarios of the guesses AI make are known and manageable. Either small artifacts due to the upscaling or short artifacts due to the frame generation. And you know what? If I don't like what I see, I can still get the real thing by getting a better card and rendering at a native resolution with none of this upscaling or frame generation. I think the moment we can start panicking about all of this is when they start talking about outputs that are better than native renders. That's the line you should not cross. And that's what they are clearly doing with what they showed last month and that they called DLSS 5. Here I was going to show it to you and to dissect it frame by frame to show that it's not DLSS anymore, but we are not doing that. I think it's obvious that this is crossing the line. They are showing before and after pictures and they are nothing alike. This is adding hair to bald spots. This is adding lipstick to women. This is adding lights that don't exist. And they are saying it's better than the native render. If you need me to explain why it's crossing a line, like you don't know why the model they train chooses to add lipstick or a light, those are biases. You don't know what the goal of this thing is anymore. Here, AI is supposed to generate stuff and intent is not clear. So at that point, the entire frame is an artifact. And this time, I cannot buy a better card and do the render without using any AI. AI generation is unpredictable and biased based on a training data that we don't know about and that now becomes part of the rendering pipeline, making developers unable to control the output.
We combine 3D graphics, structured data, with generative AI, probabilistic computing.
I almost made an entire video trying to explain frame by frame how bad it was, but then I almost cancelled this video. From now on, this is speculation from my part, but I think this is complete bullshit. When you show the picture to people who don't know anything about game dev and art, and like they might see the AI slop DLSS 5 once and think it looks way closer to real life or something like that, disregarding all the issues about artistic intent.
The first thing that I think sticks out to anyone here is the fidelity and realism in Gross's face.
But most developers will not use this technology, and those who do will be considered to have little to no integrity. Most players won't even be able to use this because it seems to be more intensive this time around than just rendering the game. That's why I now think that this is a Trojan horse.
This is our next generation of graphics technology. We call it neural rendering. This is DLSS 5. Take a look at it.
They're using the DLSS brand to present AI slop as a new rendering technique. Why would they do that? Well, they might be interested in normalizing AI slop. If you start thinking of AI slop as just the next technical improvement of rendering instead of a disgusting abomination, it's good for them. Like, they are the one providing the cards to create AI slop. If AI slop becomes more accepted, they sell more cards. Also, Nvidia might just want the attention. They probably knew that devs and most gamers will hate this, but each time you criticize it, you also show how good they are now at generating AI slop, you know? And remember, some people don't care about artistic intent, they just see more contrast and more details and think it's better. Why do you think all the settings are f***ed up by defaults on your TV? Look, I'm making this video right now about it, so it works. That's why I almost decided to not do it. But I think it was important to tell you 3 important things. Firstly, don't let anyone or any company cross the line. AI should not create stuff you don't control. You should be able to know exactly what an AI should be outputting. And any deviation from this output should be obvious and insignificant or harmless. That's the line. And nowadays, a vast majority of AI use cases they are selling us, they cross the line. We shouldn't be okay with this. Character recognition is okay, but rewriting the entire page is not. Secondly, we seem to be in a bubble right now, and a lot of those companies are showing horrible AI use cases, and I'm not sure it's because they are stupid, not all of them. There's one company that made an ad for an AI companion that looked like a Black Mirror episode. And I shared it when it came out, saying, look, they are so stupid, this will never catch on. I was tricked into sharing news about an awful product that no one knew about before. The Black Mirror vibe was intentional. On the same note, a lot of people think that the fear of AGI was used to give more credit than warranted to AI. Also, OpenAI recently shut down an entire video generation social media platform they launched last year without notice. These companies are just announcing stuff for clout at this point. We should be very cautious about how we react to things right now to be able to inform about the risks and danger of AI without giving too much credit to what these companies are making. That's why this video is more about how this move seemed to be a Trojan horse, how this has no right to be called DLSS, and not about the AI slop filter itself and if it's good or not. Finally, training the model is energy intensive, but it's supposed to be a one-time thing, so most people disregard it. However, real-time image-to-image AI generation on top of a traditional high-resolution rendering is insane. I felt like I should maybe say something, like climate change was not a phase, it's still going on. And as soon as they are all done with their racism and AI bullshit and all, maybe we could go back to trying to do something about it? So yeah, I don't know. Fuck AI.